Good morning, everyone. It's time for the market analysis on Tuesday because yesterday, at the normal day of the week, it was a national holiday still here in the Netherlands. So we got plenty to look at, and market wise, today is even more interesting than yesterday, so timing is quite good. For the stream, looking at the global markets, Europe is in the red, inflation numbers coming up later this week. US pre-market is in the red. Oil is picking up a bit. Gold and silver just pretty much going sideways. Bond yields are still a bit sideways. So the market is looking not too volatile at this moment, but we have some events on the calendars that might change that later this week. We'll take a look at that in a minute. One interesting thing that I've been seeing coming up more and more on the popular news sites, and I think they also covered it here, is you read more and more about Web3 remaking the internet with blockchain technology, and I think it's a very interesting development there. So if we go into a bull market again, it will be very interesting to watch the altcoins that are related to Web3. So it is a category of altcoins I am watching for when prices go up again. Looking at the calendar, today we have balance of trade, and I got a bit of a feeling that the consensus, the expectations are a bit too optimistic. If we look, the consensus is just above minus 90 million USD, and I think it might be a bit disappointing. So that can definitely fuel a bit more downside for the stock markets and thus for Bitcoin at US market open. Might be a nice short opportunity there. Wednesday, pretty quiet, nothing really shocking. Thursday also nothing really shocking. And Friday we have the big one, core inflation rate year over year, month over month, inflation rates coming out, and the market is definitely watching that. Most important, the inflation rate year over year, expected to be stable at 8.3, but not too sure about that. I think the balance of trade will, if that's worse than expected, then I think you can count on inflation rates also being a bit worse than expected. So times of the week to watch: today at market open and Friday at US market open for sure. If we switch to the charts, let's start with the DXY US dollar index. We topped out pretty nicely around that 105-ish that we were expecting there, and we did last week. I think I said we could go down to backtest 100. Well, we didn't really make it yet, but well, 1% off is within acceptable limits for me. We perfectly hit it. We just went below that Fibonacci golden pocket of the last move here briefly for 2 days, Friday and Monday, and then we hit this resistance zone. We got rejected, and we are now trying to break it into that resistance again. For the moment, it doesn't look like it is succeeding there yet, but maybe at US market open, the balance of trade and the inflation figures will have the final move for DXY. If it breaks resistance, expect something like this before maybe moving up. If we break down, we could just go back to these 100 levels again. So far we are getting momentum flip to the positive areas. We get confirmation here with percentage R crossing its moving average, SSL channel already in the green. So it is looking for upside, but with this big resistance zone on top of it, this might just already worked out. Since the momentum flip and TD sequential on 31 May, we already went up almost a percentage on the peak, so it's safe to say that this move pretty much played out already, and we have to see how it develops on over the next days. Quickly looking at Nasdaq with correlation to Bitcoin, we do see that over the weekend, pretty much also last week, correlation has dropped quite a bit actually. We went from the high 90s towards the high 40s, 50%. So interesting to see if this continues, because in the past we have also been in negative correlation, but over the last month we had this very high correlation level. So that the correlation is dropping is for me a sign to watch the markets of Bitcoin, because it could mean last time we had that drop in correlation, stock markets went up nicely and Bitcoin just went sideways. Let's see if we got another period where it was so correlated. Yeah, here, that's when Bitcoin started to drop while the stock markets were getting higher. So, nice indication that things might be about to change on that level. Gold just pretty much floating sideways around its, finding support on its 200-day moving average for the second time here. Hard to make any predictions on that while we're still in this level of price action. Before we can flip bullish, we have to break that 1880 level here, but before we can flip bearish, we can go down to 1780 aroundish. As long as we make a higher low there, we are still doing okay, but we do need that as bearish confirmation. So not much going on lately in the gold market. Bitcoin charts will dig in later. Bitcoin dominance got a nice jump up but got rejected. Around pretty much the just below the previous swing high here of October 21. And there's a long way to go. I don't think we will reach 50% anytime soon. But if a major move happens on Bitcoin, either to the downside or the upside, this could break up to the 50% level there. At the moment, we just have to wait if this is just a backtest of this previous resistance. We're currently backtesting it as support, but we could easily fall down and go back to 45, 43-ish. I think that's very likely. If tomorrow the market's not that moved by the balance of trade, then Bitcoin will probably go a bit sideways until Friday together with the stock markets. And that would give some altcoins a few days to take a nice price jump. So level to watch on dominance is pretty much exactly where it is now. Maybe this zone here. If it drops below 46, then it's definitely, there are some nice short-term altcoin opportunities on the horizon. Because if we break below that, the next logical level would be, let's see, probably around 2% down, and finally the moving average about 7 to 8% down. So watch this level if you want to do some short-term altcoin trading. It might be getting interesting later today or tomorrow. Ethereum to Bitcoin, pretty much down, but we are getting some push up here around these previous lows. So no real valid patterns on these time frames. You might consider this a falling wedge that could break up again to here. Like we saw on the dominance, we could probably go 6, 7, 8% up on most altcoins before continuing down. Bitfinex positions reaching new, the long positions are reaching very high levels at the moment. So it seems the whales are still scaling into long-term longs, barely any shorts on the horizon, at least not growing. So does this mean we are at the bottom? No, it just means that this is probably a good level to start scaling in. Some whales that I do know, they just scale in $5,000 moves. So they're scaling in around that 30k now, and if we drop to 25k, they will scale in again. If we drop to 20, and they will just keep scaling in however low it will go. So no trading edge here, but it is interesting to watch, especially as long as we don't see a big increase in short positions like we had here. Then there's no reason to act on this. Total market cap, pretty much the Bitcoin picture. It's going sideways, it's getting squeezed by this Gann line here between the Fibonacci support and the descending Gann line. So there is a move coming somewhere this month, a big move. I don't think we will, and by the end of this month we will be in this level. We will probably either go back to the 1.7 trillion and then we have to go all the way back, or we will probably crash to 800k. So percentage wise, you're looking at 40% up or 35% down. Scary numbers, but there's just no support and resistance in between here. If you look in history what it did between those levels, up, down, between that 800k and that 1 trillion. Remember in January 21 when we were hitting that magic 1 trillion number. Here also between that 1 trillion and that 1.7, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, before finally breaking it. And now we also went down, so there's no reason not to go up and down between that 800k and 1.2-ish trillion, and between 1.2 trillion and the 1.8 trillion. So this chart looking like there's a big move on the horizon for June. And we can only wait and trade if we see the move happening. So far, from a purely TA standpoint, we are getting higher lows, but we're also getting lower highs, so we're definitely squeezing in triangle. Right tool, triangle. Yep, there we go. So you're probably looking at something like this, very roughly. So the apex is mid-June. If I had to pick a time when the move will start, it will probably be mid-June, 15, 16 June. So that's something to look out for. Quickly looking at the stock markets, they're pretty much range bound here, trading in a box, and that goes for all the stock markets. Also in a bit of a squeeze. Some are making higher lows like the S&P, but the Nasdaq is making identical lows, so it's a very defined range we're trading in. I saw some people claiming the bull flag narrative. On the S&P you might have it, but it's a very shallow flag. It's very straight. I think the more valid pattern here is just a boxed zone we're ranging in. Direction neutral, could go either way. I don't really see the bull flag narrative. What I do see obviously is that these highs from mid-May are now acting as a support level. So breaking out of this boxed zone will be the next volatility jump here on the VIX. So TA chart wise, I don't think there's anything that gives a statistically high chance of pointing into a certain direction. We have to wait for the box breakout, and like always we want to see a breakout, backtest and move up, or break down, backtest and move down to confirm the price action, so it's not a fake out like we had here briefly. Looking at the Bitcoin chart, we are back in that crazy zone again. When I drew it up all the way here, that zone was created in May 21 to July 21, and a year later we are, after all the price action that happened, we're back again in that zone. TD sequential is being spot on this 4-hour chart. Bottom here, that bottom of the wick there, we had a nice 9 top, but no really clear countdowns. But here we had that A13 with that compressed 9 as confirmation before this 6% drop last night, or this morning actually. Yesterday night in the VIP channel we discussed this move already after getting the 13, and we did get our price confirmation. So just like the market cap, we're in a squeeze between the descending Gann lines. Like this purple line has been perfectly acting as resistance. The zone, we're exactly in the center of the zone at the moment. Oh, we could go within the zone. We have about 2.5% to the downside and 3% to the upside. So on lower time frames, you can definitely do some nice scalping moves, or you can short at the top and long at the bottom. But for the moment, we're just in the middle. If we're looking at this area here, we also see that the apex is also mid-June, obviously the same as the total market cap is showing. So expecting another 1-2 weeks in this zone before the final move will come. Low time frames, as discussed in the VIP channel, when we were on the 4 hour here, we had that aggressive 13 countdown followed, and then I said in the channel I'm just waiting for some price action confirmation of the reversal in this area here between this candle top and the resistance here above. On the 4 hour we only got our momentum flip here just before this big move down, so that was shot perfectly. And on the 1 hour we had some lower time frame confirmations with, let me just delete those. So on the 1 hour we also had aggressive 13 followed by the sequential 13 here. You could enter here, but price action confirmation pretty much followed here when we broke the percentage R broke its moving average, and the SSL channel flipped orange here on this candle. So that was a lovely short for this morning. Hope you caught it. If you are in the VIP channels, you should be able to catch those. Looking at the current time, market hyper was a bit behind on that curve here, but these settings are for the 4 hour and above, so that's no surprise. Looking, we are getting a nice anchor wave here, waiting for a bit of a pullback and back up, so we get a nice trigger wave and maybe some confirmations to the upside. SSL channel is flipping orange, and percentage R and its moving average are coming closer together, so probably about US market open we will get a cross or a rejection in price action. We have some exclamation marks here, some divergence between the different momentum, the delta momentum and trend momentum here. That's often a sign of a bottom or a top. Like same here, these exclamation marks here pretty much called the top. You do want them in pairs, in groups, not just a single one like here. But these two perfectly called the top of this range. Combining that with the price action confirmation of percentage R and SSL and the TD sequentials just gives you an edge for high probability trade. Worked out perfectly here today. If we quickly go to the daily on this chart, just remove some drawings. Price action sideways, up and down around its moving average. Trend momentum is flat on the daily. There's just no action at all. So when momentum is that flat, you can pretty much ignore all the oscillators on that time frame. On the 4 hour, we obviously had that little Bart pattern here. Pretty much a diamond reversal followed by an instant 100% correction. Perfectly hit here. So now we just have to wait. Currently there's no edge for either upside or downside. Going to lower time frames. We do have a count 9 playing out, but momentum is so flat. The red-green wave on the background is so flat that don't think this is tradable, especially since we don't have any TD sequential confirmations. Like we had a very nice, let me just move that one out of the way. We had a very nice combo 13, marking the end of the move down. We had a lot of aggressives at the top, and this cluster of aggressive combo and sequential in one go, pretty much calling the top here. But it's the 15 minutes, so you want to have that combined with other factors. So at the moment I don't see any edges to trade. We'll have to wait out our time for things to align and to give us another edge. What is doing nice things is the US oil fund. Like last week we were talking about, and that was on the 30th. We were talking about this breakout of this triangle, this accumulation range. It's been in since March, beginning of March 2022. We broke out. We had a few pullbacks. Obviously, it's not a crypto. It's a stock. It's an ETF. But what you do see now is that here we hit this previous resistance from this reversal candle on the 8th of March, and we got rejected, did a bit of a pullback. We broke that level and we're now perfectly backtested even that level as support, and we are trying to bounce. Target of the triangle is still that $100, but long term I think this will go much higher. If you just look at the monthly chart, you know, in the 08 recession it even went to over $900. So we did a very deep pullback here, and since the COVID low it is slowly been going up, accelerating in the last few months, obviously driven by this macroeconomical geopolitical situation. We are on count 7, so there should be at least 8, 9, like the whole summer period will be still upside potential. Again, looking for that $100, 120, 125 as next target. But the monthly is looking very good for more price action. So 100, 125-ish, and then 130, 150, 160 is even likely over this course of the month. On the weekly chart, we might see a bit of a pullback after this week. Aggressive 13 on a setup count 7. So 8, 9, I think 2 more weeks going up, and Would not surprise me if the next 2 weeks we would hit that 100 on a TD9 and then having a bit of a pullback, probably back to this 80, 88 or 80 level before continuing further up. So, very nice trade again. We've been trading USO, at least I am, and I've been streaming it a lot. We've been trading several moves within this triangle and now trading the breakout. I think my entry was around 85-ish, my re-entry, let's call it that way, around 85-ish. So nice start of the move. And if we break below this support, I will exit my position just to wait for the pullback and re-enter on its way up. Then the last thing to look at, I saw a YouTube video somewhere this week where somebody was looking at the 2-year bond yields to predict the stock market, and well, we know what the stock market does, Bitcoin does. So just taking a quick look at that. 2-year bond yields, if you compare that with the Fed funding rate, you pretty much see that it is identical with just a shift in time. So what we do see here is that after the bond yields are topping out, then a few months after, the Fed rates are coming down again, the funding rates. Also here we see the 2-year yields curving up, and a few months later the Fed is raising its funding rates. So clear correlation with that, and we know that the Fed has announced more rate hikes. So expect rate hikes above the funding fee, above 2% pretty soon. The last numbers of this graph was in April. But if we look at the stock markets, and I got the S&P 500 futures here, bond yields are trying to top out, but we don't have any confirmation yet until we go below that 2.44%. If we look at previous periods in time where bond yields were topping out, we see that the stock market initially followed down at first, but then stock market started to pivot upwards, and together with the stock market, Bitcoin was going up while the bond yields are kept going down. Yeah, we'll ignore beginning 2020 because that's a black swan event. Let's see other periods. Here bond yields also topped out. Initially stock markets followed, but then stock markets started on their recovery run up while bond yields just zigzag accumulated and went down a bit until this point in time. Now I quickly have to move to a line chart because we're going too far back. Here, this peak here, bond yields topping up, topping out, stock market following just to start its correction up while bond yields continue to slumber down. Same here, bond yields topping out, going down, stock market following down, but after a while stock market started to move up while the bond market was going sideways a bit. Pretty much the same story all over again. So what can we expect at these levels? Well, If the bond yields are starting to go down, sideways, down, sideways, down over the coming month, and we're talking about until 23 here, we should, based on the history, we should see stock markets going down a bit before starting to recover and go to the run up. And if time was any estimate, then we are looking at the end of the year, probably before August, after the summer holiday, maybe at the soonest, like after August to the end, the last quarter of the year. We know where stock markets go, Bitcoin will follow, so still we might first get a bit of a recovery rally before doing that, obviously. But long term, I don't think the bottom is in yet for Bitcoin, for the stock markets. We might even see the bond yields going up for a few months more. If we quickly look at it from an indicator perspective, US02 yields. No weekly TD sequentials. We are at count 7 here on the daily chart, so we might see a bit of a downside, but as long as we don't break below that 2.4, it should be no big pullback. It will be interesting once this really starts pulling back to below these levels, making lower lows. Then we know we might get that last leg down in stock markets in Bitcoin to finally bottom out and start moving up again. So just a quick sidestep, looking at some macroeconomics developments and how stock markets and Bitcoin reacted on that in the past. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Trade safely and keep those stock market open today and Friday in mind, and make sure you got your positions covered. Thanks for watching and see you all in the channels.